Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our first ever Facebook takeover with Tell. And we're here with Alice from Tell. So, Alice, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit more information about Tell?
Hi, thanks, Megan. I'm Alice Vogt. I'm one of the founding members of TAL, along with two of my very good friends, Fawn Rogers. Her and I have both got cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disease, also falling under the rare diseases. And we've both had double lung transplants, well, two in my case, one in hers. And then our third founding member is Bonnie. Bonnie is she teaches in medical law, and she's currently busy doing her PhD at Bristol University, actually, and in a topic that's also related to organ donation. So the three of us just felt that we've got a really unique perspective on organ donation, a lot more unique than most, because, I mean, Bonnie comes from the medical or the legal side of it, and Fawn and I come from the patient side of it. And we started in 2018. We'll be 2 years old next month, actually. So, yeah, combined with our unique perspective and our what do you call it, our previous NPO experience, we just decided that this is something that we're really passionate about, and we do it for the love of it. It's a self-funded NPO, so yes, we just absolutely do it because we love it. We've also got an amazing project manager called Stella de Kok, and then we've also got some very active volunteers who are helping us out big time.
That's fantastic. And I know you did a huge thing last year with getting Tell tattoos. And we met up at one of the tattoo places because I got one. I'm always up for a good cause and another tattoo. Are you doing that again this year? And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So it's an ongoing campaign. It's never really stopped. It's just, sometimes gets a bit quieter than other times because of studios availabilities. So it's called our Make It Known campaign, and it's part of our public organ donation awareness. The tattoo itself is quotation marks, and it symbolizes that you've had the conversation about donating your organs with your family. Because as you know, but other people might not know, that your family gives the ultimate consent for organ donation. So even if it was in your will, even if you registered as an organ donor, even if you had it tattooed on your forehead, your family still gets the final say. And the tattoo idea came from, people are normally quite keen to explain their tattoos to people, or they get asked, like, what does your tattoo mean? So the Tell tattoo is twofold, in the sense that, A, you start the conversation about organ donation with random people and friends, because they ask, what's that tattoo about? And you tell them about organ donation. And then secondly, there's no way that your family wouldn't know your wishes about organ donation if you had it tattooed on yourself. So that's where the symbolism came from. So far, we've had plus minus 2,000 people get the Tell tattoo, but it comes and goes. At the moment, we've got about 5 studios doing them, not for free. They do need to cover their costs after this whole COVID pandemic, so it's 200 Rand currently, but that's literally just to cover their hygiene costs, the cost of the ink, all of that. So the campaign is ongoing. Like I said, like any campaign, it goes through ups and downs and seasonal changes. Winter is not a very busy time for people to get tattoos. It seems to be more popular in summer, but yes, it's always ongoing. And if people just check out our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, we post all the studios that are offering it.
That's fantastic. I absolutely love the idea. And if people want to get involved, can they just reach out to you through social media?
Like yes, we check our messages the whole time. Studios have messaged us on social media before, or alternatively, you can just send an email to info@tal.org.za, because at least yeah, that email goes to all of us as well. So, it won't be missed.
Okay, fantastic. Now, we've got a few questions that were put on the Rare Diseases Facebook page in preparation for this event. So the first question is, can organ donation still happen during the COVID-19 pandemic?
So we actually shared an article today about Groote Hospital in Cape Town, and I've known for a while that they've completely closed all transplant surgeries for time being, and that's been a few months now. I've also got friends on the waiting list in Cape Town and who've had their transplants in Cape Town, and they've also told me that transplants have been put on hold at their hospital. In the rest of the country, it's a case-by-case basis. So transplants have definitely taken a back seat because hospitals have been quite full, doctors are busy, understaffed, and then also organ donation is just not on the top of mind for the staff working in the hospital. So yes, unfortunately, it has taken quite a lot of a back seat. But I have heard one of my friends have actually received lungs during the lockdown period. So it is happening, just very slowly.
Okay, sure. That's quite scary because if you've been on the waiting list for a while and now could be
Now
your
it's
chance.
paused.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is terrible. And obviously, if you're on the waiting list for a transplant, you're already quite sick, so you're already high risk of getting COVID. And now you've also got the added burden of possibly not getting an organ in time. So I'm just very thankful that I'm not in that position right now. And I really feel for people who are waiting for organs at the moment.
Yeah, it must be such a scary situation. It just makes the whole COVID pandemic so much scarier and so much more real. And
yes.
Then the next question is, can an organ be transplanted if someone has passed away due to COVID?
No, unfortunately not. I actually checked with my physician and he said no, they would not take a donor who passed away from COVID.
Okay. Is a transplant fully covered by the medical aid?
It would depend on which medical aid you are. I know some medical aids by nature are better than others, but the major medical aids in South Africa do cover it. And with my second transplant, that was about 3 years ago, there was only one bill that was in dispute. It was one of the doctors, and in the end, Discovery negotiated with the doctor. Well, now I've given away my medical aid as well. But, there were negotiations between the surgeon and the hospital. And in the end, it was all sorted out. So I personally did not have to pay for my transplants. But I mean, you get pre-authorization for the transplants. So what you need to do is when they pre-authorize your transplants, when you go onto the waiting list, you need to read all the T's and C's and just make sure that everything is covered. It's just easier than trying to sort it out afterwards.
Yeah. So the moment you put onto that waiting list, you start going through everything with a fine-tooth comb and just making sure that you understand it all. Okay.
And luckily the transplant coordinators are quite good because if you're having your transplants in the private sector, it's part of the requirement is that your medical aid has agreed to pay for it before they list you. But it's just to like you say, there's always that fine print. For example, in my case, there was fine print about the surgeon's rates and stuff like that I didn't really not care about, but I didn't notice at the time of being listed. It feels so far away getting this organ, but then yes, it's just good to be awake and aware of who is charging what rates, what does the medical aid cover, etc.
Okay, this is such great information. Thank you, Alice. What are the main reasons why people don't become organ donors? What have you found? I know that you've put a lot of research into this.
So funny enough, a lot of people just never think about it. So if you haven't known someone who's needed an organ, or you haven't seen much of it in the media, or you just, I don't know, ignorant, then you've just never thought about it. And to be honest, then what happens is, if you pass away one day and should you be a potential donor and your family gets asked the question, then more often than not, the family, rather than being worried about making the wrong decision, they'd rather say no, like they don't know what you wanted. They don't want to upset other family members. They'd rather just step away from it. So that's something that happens, unfortunately, because the conversation was never had and people just never thought about it. And then some of the other more, I would say, silly myths, but I suppose you don't get something like that, is people think it would cost them money to be an organ donor, which it doesn't. What they do is the recipients, the various recipients, the split of the donor's medical expenses get split between the recipients. So say you donate 5 organs, then the cost of those organs being taken out of the donor, etc., gets split 5 ways between the 5 recipients. So it doesn't cost you or your family anything to donate. Some people think it's against their religion, but we've done a lot of reading up, and there's literally in the whole world only 1 or 2 religions that are completely against it. But for all other religions, if you speak to your religious leaders and you go back to the concept of saving a life, then, almost all religions are pro saving a life. And a lot of them almost even sees it as like we do, like being a hero. It's part of being part of bigger than yourself, giving a part of you away so that other people can live. So yes, if you do think it's against a religion, then speak to your spiritual leader or Google it, but it's probably not against a religion. So there's that. And then some people believe your body needs to be buried whole. That's not one of my beliefs, so it's hard to specifically talk about that. But when people do say that, that no, my body has to be buried whole, for me it doesn't make sense, because what if your appendix was taken out when you were a kid and your tonsils were taken out, or you had a hysterectomy and your uterus was taken out, or you had cancer and your breasts were removed? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't seem like a really valid reason. But yes, I mean, we're not here to judge other people's religions or beliefs, but so we just always tell people, well, Google or speak to your own spiritual leaders, but it shouldn't be a problem.
And what would you say is one of the most important things about, like, when you sign up to be an organ donor? And I know it's a lot to do with your name as well. So would you say the most important thing is to have that conversation with your family? Like, the moment you sign up, let them know, have all the information there, put it into your will. What do you do? How do you let people know?
So interestingly enough, legally, there are 2 ways in which to be an organ donor. And we know this because of our co-founder, Bonnie, and she's kind of drilled this into us. But legally, you need to put it in a will, or you need to have a legal document with 2 witnesses saying that you want to donate your organs. And according to the law, that is literally all you need to do to be an organ donor. But in practice, your will is read too late. By the time they read your will, you are more often than not already dead. You've already passed away. So it is too late, unfortunately. You could potentially still donate tissue. So if they read your will and they say you wanted to be an organ and tissue donor, they could still use some of your tissue, but it would be too late for solid organs. And regarding a legal document with 2 people signing as a witness, even though that is legally the case, in practice, doctors would never, if they had a piece of paper who said that you are a donor, your 2 friends signed as witnesses, they are not going to take your body away from your family and go and cut out your organs because of some paper that 2 of your friends witnessed. So in practice, they would never look or let a legal document like that trump your family's decision. So your family they will always have the ultimate decision. Same with registering as a donor. You can register as a donor with the Organ Donor Foundation, but that's not a legally binding document at all. So there's no witnesses involved, even as an example. It's literally just a database. So even, if your family are unsure of your wishes, the doctors could contact the Organ Donor Foundation to try and see if you were registered as a donor. But even then, like I said, if your entire family is not happy with it, then it will not go ahead. So hence our name. And like you said, our big message is to tell your family, because if they don't know, it makes it so difficult for them, because now they're already grieving and you're putting them in a situation where they need to make these life-altering decisions. And there might already be complicated family dynamics to start off with. I mean, families aren't perfect. So now you're adding this extra burden where they don't know what to do. They don't know what your wishes were. You never spoke about it. Whereas you're really doing them a favor by just, either way, if you don't want to be a donor, also tell your family. They need to know. So whether it's yes or no, just make sure they know.
Okay. And if someone has a rare disease or a chromosomal abnormality like Down syndrome or like Sjogren's, some of the other diseases that have been listed here are neurofibromatosis, myasthenia gravis, can you still register as an organ donor?
We always say to people, yes, you can register, because at the end of the day, they look at you when you are brain dead, and then they assess what can be used, what can't be used, because to be realistic, you don't know even in what way you're going to die. I mean, you might be in a collapsed building and there's nothing left of you. So you had absolutely no medical conditions, but nothing is able to be donated in any case. Or you might, they've actually got a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but there are often donors who were on the waiting list for organs, and then they don't end up getting an organ. So they do pass away, but they end up donating other organs. So you might be waiting for a heart transplant. Unfortunately, you never made it to your transplant, but you were able to donate your kidneys, you were able to donate tissue. So every case is literally a case-by-case basis. Me, for example, I mean, I've had 2 double lung transplants, so they can't use my lungs. They would be like third hand. Also, the cystic fibrosis affects my pancreas, so my pancreas could never be used. Cystic fibrosis, it could affect your liver. In my case, it hasn't, touch wood, up until now. And my kidneys might be damaged due to all the medications I've been taken, but my heart is definitely good to go. I've actually checked with my doctor. So, it really depends. In my case, maybe my kidneys and my heart might still be good, my skin might still be good, and that can be donated. So same with any chronic disease, any genetic disease. It literally depends on your condition at the time of your death.
And is there ever any chance that they would try and take your organs before actually knowing that you have passed away? Like you spoke about, you would be, is it brain dead? Is that the right wording?
Yes.
How do they test for that to make sure? Because I think some people are a little bit nervous around that.
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I think there's been some terrible movies that have come out in the past about that topic, and just about organ donation in general, because it's such a fascinating subject that creative people like to get really creative when it comes to organ donation storylines. But in reality, 2 independent doctors have to declare you brain dead. So those doctors can't be on any transplant team. They can't be your doctor. They have to be absolutely independent, and also there's a certain amount of years that they need to have practiced medicine. So you wouldn't have a doctor in their first year of being a doctor declaring someone brain dead. So there are really a lot of measures in place to make sure that you are absolutely brain dead. And there's various tests that they do. It's not just one test that they do. There's a whole range of tests, and you need to well, I wouldn't say pass all those tests, but you need to fail all those tests and be declared brain dead by two people who have got a lot of experience and are independent, etc., etc. So yes, in reality, there's literally like no chance that they could take your organs. And in fact, I've actually heard from a transplant coordinator that some people have been saved that way, where they wouldn't have done brain death testing if it weren't for the fact that organ donation have come up. You know, the topic has come up. So they would have been sent to the morgue and, you know, been brain dead. But the tests in order to donate organs have picked up that they weren't actually brain dead.
Oh. Wow.
So it's actually a really good thing to you know, be an organ donor, because they will make sure that you are extremely dead before they take anything out.
Okay, well, I'm sure that's helped to calm a lot of people, because like you say, the movies always show like someone's actually alive and now they like digging their organs out. So yeah.
No, it's so terrible.
So someone said, can you show us what the tattoo looks like? And do you have a list of all the tattoo places that are doing it? Do you have one of the
I can
tattoos?
show you the tattoo because I've got one. It's quotation marks. You can, you know, adjust it according to your style. Some people who have a personal meaning to it. Yeah, you can show us
see
yours
mine.
as well.
Mine's not coming on the screen. It's not finding my body. Oh, it's like an awkward place.
You chose a hotspot. So
Yeah.
some people, if they've had a loved one pass away, that added dates to the tattoo. Some people like added flowers to the tattoo. So the basic thing is just the quotation marks, and then some people like to embellish that a little bit. But if anyone asks us, we're willing to send them the, you know, the image. And in terms of a list of places, if you just scrolled on our Facebook timeline, it would take you 1 minute. I think we literally posted last week 7 new places that are offering it, mostly in Gauteng, but there's one in the Western Cape. And then every day we are reaching out to more studios and trying to get more of them on board, especially now that they've opened again. You know, that part of lockdown is over. So a lot of them are quite keen just to get feet back into studios. And because it's covering their cost now, then, you know, it's not us asking them for a favor per se. So yes, I would really say, you know, if they want to email us, we can send a list and reply to the email. But otherwise, our Instagram might even be easier, because Instagram shows you like all the images like in one go, like 9 of them. So you'll really see which studios are doing them.
Okay, great. Thank you. What are the most common organs that are donated? Do you have any idea?
Kidneys, I would probably say kidneys, because the waiting list for kidneys is very, very big. One of the reasons being that kidney patients have dialysis, where dialysis can keep them alive while they wait for transplant, whereas the other organs don't have that backup plan. So, you know, if you're waiting for a heart, liver, lungs, you don't have an artificial organ to do the job of the organ for you. So it sounds quite terrible, but the people waiting for other organs apart from kidneys die on the waiting list. So the waiting list stays relatively short because people just pass away on the waiting list continuously. Whereas kidneys, you know, that people can get dialysis, so they can wait for a really long time, and they do. In South Africa, the waiting time for a kidney is 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
Yes, and kidneys can be donated while you're alive. So a lot of kidneys get transplanted from family members, from the patient. So it could be family members, even friends, spouses. So yes, kidneys are transplanted quite a lot. Mostly obviously one donor has 2 kidneys. So if one donor passes away, 2 people get a transplant. Whereas for the other organs, it's normally one organ and one recipient. The liver can be split, but it depends on the size of the recipients and the size of the donor, etc. And yes, the fact that you can donate a kidney while being alive also adds to a lot of extra transplants.
Very interesting. Then the next one, how do you get placed on the transplant list?
Gosh, it's hard. So firstly, a big factor is, are you a private patient or are you a state patient? So if you're a state patient, for certain organs, you have to almost be in a specific city, because lungs, for example, if you're a state patient, they will only transplant you at Grooteskier Hospital in Cape Town. So if you don't have medical aid and you need a lung transplant, you need to get yourself to Cape Town and get a transplant in Cape Town. That is literally like your only option. Then for heart transplants, it's, as far as I know, it's the same. In the state sector in Gauteng, they do kidneys and livers. Most of the country does kidneys, livers in the state sector. Hearts and lungs are only in Cape Town. I stand to be corrected. Lungs definitely only in Cape Town, but hearts, if you're a state patient, also Cape Town. If you're a medical aid patient, then to get onto the waiting list, your medical aid needs to approve, like I said before. Then they also put you through what they call a workup, where you get admitted to hospital for about 3 days on average, and then they literally test all your other organs. So in my case, I needed lungs, but they need to make sure that the rest of your body is okay. So I mean, they can't give you a lung transplant, but then your kidneys and your liver is failing as well, because that would defeat the point and they'd be wasting an organ. So they need to test your other organs. You need to go through psychiatric assessments to make sure that you know what you're in for and that you're really motivated to go through this, because it's not an easy operation or an easy recovery, and for the rest of your life you will be different, in terms of you'll always be on medication. You always need to take care of yourself because you're going to have a suppressed immune system, and you also need a support system. So they also talk to your family and see, have you got a support system? Do you have people who love you and take care of you? Is there someone at home who's going to help you bath after transplant, etc.? So there is a whole lot of things that need to be approved before you can get onto the waiting list. For kidney patients, also you need access to dialysis. So once again, if you're a private patient, it's a bit easier. If you're a state patient, firstly, you need to have access to dialysis, and then they can even just start thinking about transplant. So there's a lot of hurdles.
Yeah, flip. And can you explain what a living donor is?
Yes, so like I mentioned with the kidneys, you can donate one of your kidneys and live, a functional life with only one kidney. So that's normally to a family member, or even a close friend. You do get altruistic donors where you just kind of pitch up and say, I want to donate a kidney to someone, but there's a lot more red tape involved with something like that. Then a part of your liver you can donate. Normally, I think mostly it's from an adult to a child, because your liver regenerates. So they can take part of your liver and it will regenerate. Yours will grow back, and the donated piece of liver will also regenerate itself, which is quite amazing. So liver you can donate. And then the other thing that people don't often think about, or it's actually fairly new, is if you go for a hip replacement surgery, you can donate the piece of hip that they take out from you when they give you the artificial hip, and you can donate that old hip of yours, because the tissue bank, or the tissue donation center for tissue engineering, they use that hip bone to make bone product from. which people need with dentistry or spine operations, etc., etc. So yes, that's something new that you can donate while alive, is your hip bone. If you unfortunately need a hip replacement, then you can do that as well.
Wow, that is fascinating. I had no idea. Wow.
No, it's very cool.
Do you need to specify between organ and tissue donation when you sign up? And can you decide if there's a certain organ that you don't want to donate?
So again, if there is an organ you don't want to donate, that is perfectly fine, but your family must know that. So yes, you need to tell your family if you don't want your corneas to be donated or something like that. You can just say so. And in terms of organ and tissue, you don't need to. Well, look, we've said it doesn't matter if you register or not, but you don't need to register separately for the two. So generally when the transplant coordinators ask your family about donation, it would include both. So if your family says yes, the transplant coordinator would contact the tissue bank, and they would also call your family as a courtesy, but they are linked and they work very closely together. So a yes, it kind of goes for both of them, unless you've stated like you don't want to donate skin, etc., then they will respect that.
Okay, great. And what happens when you, sorry, if you happen to die in a foreign country as a South African donor? Are you still able to donate, or what will happen in that case?
I'm actually not 100% sure, and it would depend on the country that you die in. So, for example, if you were in the middle of Africa at a game lodge, probably they don't do transplants there, so it wouldn't be relevant. If you passed away in Europe, it might be different, but I'm not sure, and I would be scared that I give the wrong answer. So I'm not sure, but I would think it would be logistically quite hard, because your family would have to sign documents. So I suppose if your family went there when you were on your deathbed and you were still alive, then they might be to sign the appropriate documents. If you died suddenly and your family's not actually in the country as well, that would definitely cause some sort of, obstacle. So yes, I think it would depend on a lot of circumstances.
Okay. Do you have to be under or over a certain age to donate? Or can you be any age, any race, gender?
We always say
anything?
you can be any age, because like I said, with the diseases, like the genetic diseases or the chromosomal diseases, whatever, they would look at you at the time of your death. So I know from working with transplant coordinators that the specific coordinator I talked to, she said that her oldest liver donor was 78, for example.
Wow.
So there's definitely not an age cutoff. They look at the quality of the organs. And also you have to remember, there are 65-year-olds on the waiting list for a transplant. So if you're 65 needing a liver, then a 70-year-old liver is really quite a good deal. Like it might not go to someone who's 20, but there are all sorts of a variety of ages of people waiting for organs. Same with, there was an article we shared last year sometime where the oldest cornea donor in the world was in Scotland, and she was 102 years old.
Wow.
So that's tissue, it's not a solid organ. But again, we like to use that example to say that there's really no absolute black and white cutoff, because as you know, you get 60-year-olds who look like they're 100 and who've lived a hard life and who smoked and who drank and who just did everything unhealthily. And then you get 80-year-olds who've exercised their whole life, have a healthy diet, have no medical problems, and they would make great donors. So yes, we just tell everyone that they should talk to their family about donation, and when the time comes, the doctors will assess what is usable.
And do you think it's important to talk to your kids about it, like for them to be
Yes,
able to
absolutely
know about it and make a decision too?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, on a personal note, my first donor, I managed to years after I received the lungs, I did make contact with the family. They found me, they found my blog through social media, etc. And it was my donor's son who said they should donate her organs. I've got goosebumps now.
Oh, yeah,
But
me too.
you know, that's so it. And he was at the time, I think he was 15, he might have been 16, but it was her son who said they have to do it. So you have to tell your kids, and also to avoid conflict, because you don't want, at the time of your death, your children blaming your spouse, being like, how could you give away mom's organs when, like, you know, be all upset, and then it is something that, you know, the mother wanted. So I do think, you know, you should talk to children about stuff like that. In any case, I think children are a lot more mature with topics like death, and that then you realize, I think we don't give kids enough credit you know, about what they can handle and understand.
Yeah, so I had a family member that he passed away in a freak accident, like a soccer game, and he had brain damage and then passed away. And he was 12, and the week before he had actually said to his mum, and this, that gives me goosebumps, he had said, I want to be an organ donor. And
Yes,
so she said for her, that was such a, like a relief that she didn't have to try and make that decision about
exactly.
her baby.
I've actually heard a story as well from one of the coordinators where they also had a donor where the dad and the mom had the same thing happen. Their son came home from school a few months before his accident and said, by the way, if I die, I want to be an organ donor. And they come from quite a different cultural background to you and me, and they had barely ever heard about organ donation, and they were quite confused, but they were just like, okay, sure, whatever, eat your food. And you know, a few months later there was an accident, he was declared brain dead, and then when they were asked about donating organs, the dad actually said to the coordinator, I don't believe in this, but my son said he wanted to. So, you know, people do really respect the dead's wishes. So sometimes if family members don't even agree with your decision, they will still respect it because you verbalized it. And I mean, it has to be quite a harsh type of person to, you know, not respect your loved ones almost like final wishes, you know.
Yeah. Do you know on average how many transplants happen each year?
No, unfortunately, in South Africa, our stats hasn't been updated since 2016. So for the last 4 years, I've got no idea how many transplants they've been. I know in terms of lungs, just because I received lungs and I obviously talked to my doctors, etc. For lungs, they do, I would say, between 7 and 14 transplants a year. So on average, there's like one a month. But that's for lungs, and lungs is it's a hard organ to find. So yes, it's not a lot. It's really, in total, I think it's about 300 and something organs. I've seen that stat from 2016. So yes, in total, it's about 300 and something organs, but that includes living donors as well.
Okay, great. So that's all of our questions that we've got through, and I know we've gone a little bit over time, but Alice, thank you. It has been absolutely fascinating speaking to you and learning all about organ donation. If people want to find out more from you, how can they follow Tell? What are your different social media platforms, and how can they get in touch with you?
So our handle on all platforms is Tell.org.za. So TELL.org.za. So that's Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. I mean, you can search Tell, or you can search Transplant Education for Living Legacies, or type Tell.org.za. Then our page would come up. Our logo is blue. It's got the quotation marks, the same as our tattoos. So yes, it's not hard to find us.
Fantastic. Thank you so, so much. And thank you for being so open about your journey and your lung transplants. And it's such an honor to know you. You inspire me so much. And I love your blogs and I love your honesty and your excitement. You really are wonderful. And I'm so grateful that our rare diseases brought us together because, yeah, you're just wonderful.
No, thanks, Megan, and thanks for thinking of Tal and for letting us do this thing.
Of course. And thank you to everyone who joined us, who was part of this. We really enjoyed having you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.